At our last meeting, I've been speaking about the fact that on Turtle Island, since its so-called discovery in 1492, more than 95% of the native tribal people have been killed. And that's an estimated 75 to 100 million people. And, contemporary tribal nations call that the American Holocaust. And I've just learned that very recently, a few weeks ago, in a training I've done with Sassafras. That's a group of tribal people from what's called today Martha's Vineyard. And they also said, that an additional 30 to 60 million of bisons were also killed, in order to undermine the livelihood of the indigenous people of this Turtle Island. These numbers are just unfathomable, we can't really make sense of it, but we can allow it to sink in and really touch us. And, sitting with what has happened in the past, because as long as that isn't really looked at and digested, there's always the danger of repetition, as we are now witnessing. And I really think, that this undigested truth is underneath a lot of the upheaval in the US, that we are actually all living on what's mostly unceded land, stolen land, since hundreds of years. And in order to move on, we need to heal that first. There needs to be a reconciliation in order to make peace with the past, with the land and its original people. And it's something, we can't really think through intellectually, of course, it's so vast, but just allowing it to touch us, as a collective, without knowing immediately any solutions. And even, if we might feel we want to, this is also fear speaking, just allowing it to touch us without knowing what to do immediately. But not keeping it at bay any longer, because it fuels so much strife and because there's so much fear. So those pockets of sanity, of people who allow that truth to become conscious. That's what we can do, totally. And I think that's what we are doing, or at least, trying to do as good as we can, using the Buddha's teaching, using the 3 refuges as a support system. Because, before 1978, it was forbidden in the US even to speak about this. And there is a danger that it will become forbidden again if we don't do what we can to resist in a peaceful way as a form of a spiritual practice, social activism as a spiritual practice. As the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh and also my first teacher, Ajahn Buddhadasa, they were 2 proponents of that, 2 monks who have been living social activism and have been inspiring lots of people around the world, especially Thich Nhat Hanh. because it needs to come, from a place of a broad base, which comes from having digested, having metabolized, having integrated the past, bite by bite. And if that isn't done, then the same suppressed fears will be acted upon again and again in the same way. And that's what we can see in the last days in LA happening, where the current administration has totally overreacted, and inflamed an already difficult situation in order to have a reason to seize control, divide and conquer. And it's all coming from fear. So, what can we do in the face of the dismantling of our democratic institutions and social support systems, abuses of human rights, and government-sanctioned violence, and much more? What we see happening, in America, and it just happened again in LA. And letting that touch us brings up fear first, but then if we can stay with the fear, what's coming back is I need to stand up for my values. I can't leave it to other people to take care of that, because this is a responsibility we all have, simply by being, a citizen, being born. I need to stand up for my values, and that means I'm called, to social activism as a spiritual practice. And, for those who are not aware of it, on the upcoming Saturday, the 14th of June, there will be over 1,800 events all over America, and some also outside of America. And you can look it up. It's called No Kings. And I'm going to put that now in the chat. And you can put in your postcode, your zip code, and then you can get a list, of all of the events in your area. And that's many, many very smaller events, about 1,800. And for example, in Marin County, people are asked to come with heart-shaped signs. So I already got some red carton, and I'm going to go with 2 friends. One of them will be Jennifer, who is usually here at those meetings, but she's currently traveling actually to come here. She'll arrive tomorrow. So social activism as a profound spiritual practice that expresses that everyone and everything is interconnected and part of the sacred web of life. And the heart is the best sign for that. Standing up for what we hold most dear, these very core values, of goodness, beauty, and truth. Let us not give in to fear, rage, and hopelessness and helplessness, but rather, meeting our own fear and our own grief in a constructive and generative way to set free our own agency before it's too late. So, coming from that deep place of practice, of groundedness, and coming in peace in the middle of the chaos. And the chaos is the necessary precursor for a new order. As modernity is crumbling, as we talk about that quite regularly, reflecting on it and having breakout groups on this, the chaos is a necessary part of the process. And now it's, it's like there's another level of it happening, and we feel that there is this increasing chaos coming as a medicine, actually, to break up the old stagnation. But it's a bitter medicine. But it's a natural process. So really, important not putting people out of our heart just because they are different, they disagree with us, but rather holding fast, to our values and to the knowing that chaos is part of the process. It's a natural cycle. Just like the seasons. In the fall, in the winter, things, go down into the darkness and dissolve into the chaos of what actually becomes fertile soil for the next life forms, to come out. And we are now in that time, of the falling apart. But we are not without support, We have each other, we have the Buddhist teaching, we have the 3 refuges. We know how to meet fear, even if it's not easy. It's rather simple, as an instruction, but then to really sit with it is not easy. But we need to stay engaged, because if we stay engaged, the next step becomes discernible. If we are not engaged, we are just like not knowing what to do. So staying engaged and relating to all of those difficult emotions is the basic connection to fuel, to the fuel to keep going, to life energy. Because these difficult emotions is, life energy being caught. And then through awareness, through mindfulness, through relating to it, it starts to open up. And we know the next step and the next step and the next step. And if we don't relate to it, the path is not discernible. So let's go into a meditation, to develop a relationship to our own experience in the body. As we are hearing what I've said, or just, looking at the news. This morning somebody sent me a 8-minute talk by Governor Newsom, which was very powerful, actually. And many people say they're really glad he's finally, very clearly speaking out against the violence, which is breaking loose, because there is an intentional inflammation going on in order to be able to control. That's really, really sad that this is happening again. So, turning our awareness to the body. And allowing the breath to take us into the body. Sensing the place, where the body meets the cushion, the chair, the pressure there, the weight. the gravity, which keeps us connected, keeps us in place, whatever is happening. Any stress or tiredness, overstimulation, just allowing it to drain down into the soil underneath where we are sitting. And even sending down some roots into the soil. Into the land which has given birth to us through our mothers, and keeps us alive every moment through eating, drinking, breathing. So breathing up the vastness and the stability of the earth. As a foundation for our life. And with the out breath, letting go any tension and relaxing into the body and the spaciousness of this moment. If we are not caught in the thinking mind, we can be aware of limitless space. So being aware of our deep rootedness in earth, and relaxing into the spaciousness of the mind, which is not clinging to any thoughts in the moment. But rather being aware of the deep interdependence with earth, and listening with the whole body to what she has to say, not with words, but we can experience it with the energy body, what is being said. So feeling the aliveness, the vibrancy, the hum, of the energy body, which extends a little bit beyond the flesh body, beyond the skin. And, spreading out awareness throughout the energy body and beyond. The energy being fed into this body through the planet, what the planet is offering: food, drink, oxygen, all of it, being held in awareness and being sensed into through this aliveness, which always knows what to do since billions of years. The evolutionary process, being an expression of that aliveness. In the midst of the chaos, when the old order breaks apart, because it's time for change. The earth cannot support modernity for 8 billion people. It never was a possibility, but we just didn't pay attention for so long because we could still keep going because it was still working, but now it's no longer working. It's breaking down. And there's all kinds of different reactions. Some are very, very fearful by trying to go back to the past, by erecting walls, by getting rid of people, by grabbing everything. And others, being willing to listen and to attune and to work with the fear and the hopelessness and everything which comes up, which is part of the process as the old crumbles. So the question is, how can we serve that process for the benefit of all beings, not only human beings, all beings. And, keep the awareness alive that we are not alone in this. There's a whole planet going through this. And we are just a cell, a little tiny cell in a big, intelligent process we call planet Earth, which is doing its thing since a very long time and always has found a way to preserve life. And so remembering that, we don't need to figure it out, but we need to listen. And then act on what we know to be true, and then the next step will become discernible. That's how it works. We can't have everything figured out on the paper before. It's a improvisation. And we do have the receptors, to tune in. The body is it. And there's awareness. And we have an ancient old practice which helps us to work with all of the difficult emotions and feelings, mind states, everything what comes up, which keeps us isolated from that depth of guidance which is available. And in our case, it's the Dhamma. And there's several different options, and we are meeting in the Buddha Dhamma that has kind of drawn us together. And it's a good way to go about it. Dhamma means nature. So tuning to the aliveness which we can sense in the body and beyond. And as the constrictions become apparent, the fears and the different versions, of aversion, basically, to change, as we can sense them in the body, to meet them with kindness, with metta, with benevolence. Of course, those feelings come up. Of course, there's nothing wrong with it. But we can take care of those feelings. The whole practice is about that, to meet what is without becoming it, without believing in it, that this is who we are. My first teacher, actually not my first teacher, my second teacher, Ajahn Sumedho in England, he always said, countless hundreds of times, don't believe your mind. Don't believe your mind. And that's, if we haven't heard that before, it sounds like crazy. Whom should I believe? Of course I believe my mind. That's how I'm been schooled. But then over the years, we can see the mind is always doing the same thing. As long as the underlying energetic patterns haven't been integrated and released, from that fearful grabbing and pinning down, it's always going to be the same thing. And the sum total of that we call the ego. There's nothing bad or wrong about it, but just knowing it, not becoming it. And by knowing it and meeting it with kindness, it starts to transform. It starts to become aware of itself. And to loosen up and to become wider and deeper and more allowing, attuning, and even serving the unfolding of life, rather than fearfully going against it. And coming from a sense of gratitude for everything which has already been given. Since we are, appeared here, all of the support, all of the food, all of the drink, all of the oxygen, everything we have been given in order to mature, in order to serve that process so others can also benefit from it, future generations. And at this point in time, this requires us to stand up for our values in a peaceful manner. As representatives of planet Earth, who always knows what to do, now we are in great difficulty because we have gotten addicted to fossil fuels basically and have developed a culture which is not sustainable. And the fossil fuels are getting less and less easy to exploit, and everything is cracking up. And the planet simply can't sustain any more of that. CO2 production. So we are just at a turning point. Not for the first time, but that's the one we are now in. And there's lots of people who don't want to know about it, especially, strangely enough, politicians, who should take care of all of that thing. That's what they get paid for. They're just bluntly turning away, lying, and pretending it's not happening, and at the same time grabbing whatever they can get their hands on. It's very sad. It's really... It's worse than the movies which have been made about this, because it's real on a certain level. So that's where we are, and let that, be fully taking space in us. A lot of kindness and, deep breathing in, breathing out. This is not the end of life. This is just the end of a certain version of the dream, which needs to go with a lot of kindness. And what's called hospicing modernity, the book I have been recommending. Hospicing modernity and midwifing that which we don't know what it's going to be. And it looks like, we are drawing nearer and nearer that process, being more fully in it. And participating, as a spiritual practice, allowing this to this to land in us. Even it brings up fear, and allowing that to be there too. It's okay. It's totally normal. To be fearful if there's big changes out of our control. It's scary, but anyone who has ever given birth, you're out of control. The body knows what to do. And very often it goes well. Fear is part of growth. The stretching, the stretch zone. Being in the stretch zone without going into the panic zone, that's what we try to do with the practice. And not shutting anybody out of our heart. And standing for our truth. A fierce kind of a compassion, which comes from a deep groundedness in earth. And we are all together in this. Us here, us about 28 people here on the call, and a little pocket of sanity with all the other pockets of sanity and everyone else, and the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the oceans, the mountains. We are all together in evolving to the next expression of what this planet is gonna be. And I've brought an earth prayer by someone called Ralph Metzner. I have here like a book of earth prayers which somebody gave to me, quite a thick book. It goes like this. We pray that we may be aligned with you, so that your powers may flow through us and be expressed by us for the good of this planet Earth and all living beings on it, I would say in it. O great spirits of the South, protector of the fruitful land and of all green and growing things, the noble trees and grasses, Grandmother Earth, soul of nature, great power of the receptive, of nurturance and endurance, power to grow and bring forth flowers of the field, fruits of the garden. We pray that we may be aligned with you, so that your powers may flow through us, for the good of this planet Earth and all living beings in it. We pray that we may be aligned with you, so that your powers may flow through us, for the good of this planet Earth and all living beings in it. This poem is by Ralph Metzner. So allowing that, aspiration to be a protection for us as we are showing up in our different ways, how we are called, through who we are, where we stand in life, what our talents and skills are. We'd be called in different ways to show fierce compassion, placing the whole planet into our heart. And in the same way, as love is helping a human being to evolve, love also helps the planet to evolve as a being. We are a little cell of. And it's not for us to figure it out, but it's for us to attune and participate, become an expression, a true expression of the earth as a self-regenerative process, who always knows what to do since a very long time. Ours is to participate, not to direct. It's not about us. It's about the whole planetary community. We are all together in this and we need each other. To balance life. And through engaging the path, will become discernible, one step at a time. And we don't need more than one step at a time. We can't do more than one step at a time. So sensing into the vibration, the aliveness, whenever the mind wanders off, in the body, in the energy body, And, allowing ourselves to be, quote unquote, rewired by that, to come out of the thinking loops into the direct experience of the vibrational presence, actuality of the body right now as an expression of the planet, talking to us but not with words. It's a different language we need to learn now. Becoming more conscious of this deep interdependence. That's what we need to live from. That's what we need to remember. Our early ancestors knew how to do this, and indigenous people still today know how to do this. And the most helpful, mind states are gratitude, kindness, benevolence, equanimity, the Brahmaviharas basically. The warmth and the gentleness and the openness of the Brahmaviharas, which can relate in the appropriate way. And I have recently heard an interview where somebody was asking, what is the difference between Western people, from Western capitalist cultures and indigenous people. And the person said, the difference is indigenous people have gratitude to the planet, to nature, to Pachamama. That's the main difference. And it makes all of the difference. There's not a sense of poverty, of not having enough, constantly racing into the future to get more of this, more of that. But there's a sense of what already has been given. There's such a different way of being here. And to allow that to be met by the old patterns. It's like, wow, what have we been doing? But okay, we know now, and we can stop it now by redirecting our energy into noticing what has already been given. And that the global north and south need to share. It's very unjust. It's completely out of balance. And it's at the root of the climate crisis. So I hope, many of you have the space and the courage, to show up on the 14th social activism as a spiritual practice for the benefit of all beings. If we don't engage, the path will not be discernible. And slowly coming to the end of the session. And reflecting on, courage is also contagious, not just fear. And it starts by meeting our own inner states, and then from that meeting, we know what to do next. We know the next step.